Great Britain, France, Portugal, Spain. These were some of the great colonial empires, kingdoms with colonies all over the world from the early 16th century to the mid-1900s. But just because these European countries would have colonies doesn't mean they were the strongest nations. There were the Mamluk and Mali empires in Africa. The Bengal and Delhi sultanates were in North India, and the Vijayanagar Empire was in South India. Finally was the Majapahit Empire, which resided in modern Indonesia. But by far one of the most powerful states that existed at this time was China, more specifically the Great Ming. The Ming dynasty was by far more powerful than any of the European powers in the world during the late medieval times, and would have easily defeated any European kingdom. So that begs the question, how come the Europeans had colonies while the Asian countries did not? Well, the Europeans had a few things going for them. The main reason the Europeans could colonize is because the European nations at this time weren't exactly the best places. They were riddled with diseases and illnesses, and many people were poor. Why did this help the Europeans colonize? One reason: incentive. The Europeans had incentive to go to these wondrous and magical places such as India or China, places that were allegedly drowned in gold and other riches. These places were glorified into seemingly amazing places where all your troubles disappeared, making the common European willing to do anything to go to the mysterious and magnificent land known as Asia. The Ming dynasty, on the other hand, had no incentive to colonize, because like many Asian countries at the time, they were already pretty rich and were self-sufficient. The Europeans had a lack of raw materials, while the Asians were practically drowning in them. Another thing was that the Ming dynasty was highly isolative. At first, when the Yongle Emperor was on the throne, the Mings were more open to trading and diplomacy. The emperor famously sponsored Zhenghe's 7 voyages, where a giant fleet was made. There were 317 ships that sailed with Zhenghe in just his first voyage, and a total of 2,868 boats built between 1403 and 1419. But after the Yongle Emperor died, the Ming dynasty slowly closed their doors. One final reason that the Ming dynasty didn't colonize was that they literally thought they were the center of the world. The Mings thought of themselves as refined and elegant, with the greatest army, technology, and navy. On the other hand, they thought of the outside world as a bunch of barbaric, uncivilized, and cultured buffoons. Why would they want to have anything to do with them? For the purpose of this video, we're basically going to ignore these problems. Some unrealistic things will definitely happen, but remember, it's alternate history. This video will be focusing mainly on the colonization of Asia and Africa by China. Our timeline starts in the year 1407. Zhenghe lands in the Kok Kingdom, in modern-day Sri Lanka. Their king Alakeshvara tries to plunder the Ming ships, and the Ming navy leave Kot immediately. The Ming dynasty comes back to Kot, led by Zhenghe. They colonize the land and rename it Kuti. Alakeshvara is executed back in China. The Bengal Sultanate gives Great Ming the city of Gao, in exchange for riches, wealth, and protection. Great Ming stations troops there. The city is renamed to New Nanjing. The Ming dynasty supports Zayn al-Abidin, the leader of the Samudera Pasai Sultanate, when his throne was usurped by Sikandar. They establish a puppet state in the area, kept Zayn al-Abidin as the ruler, and renamed the kingdom to Qingzhou after the Yongle Emperor. The Ming dynasty joins the Bengal-Jaunpa War, sending more troops, in addition to the troops already stationed in Gao. They help the Bengalis win the war against Jaunpa, and Bengal annexes Jaunpa fully. This helped the Great Ming improve relations with Bengal's ally, the Ottomans. The person who had been holding together the Rashid dynasty dies. The Rashid dynasty is situated in the south of Arabia. A power struggle ensues, and the Tahir clan takes over many cities, such as Liege, and the Egyptian Mamluks take over some northern land. But the Rashids stay in power over the majority of the land. Ming vessels landed in the city of Aden, in the Rashid dynasty, taking it over and renaming it Yading. They continue to take over some land in the southeast. Finally, the Rashids fall, with the Tahir clan taking their remaining territory, while the leader of the Rashids retreating to Mecca in Egypt. The Ming dynasty sends an expedition to Kutito to get rid of the northern kingdoms, who had been attacking the Ming's colonies. The Great Ming captures some land from the Vanni chieftaincies, but the north of the island stays independent, specifically the Jaffna kingdom. The Great Ming conquer more land from the Tahirids. The Great Ming conquer every Vanni chieftaincies. More land is conquered from the Majapahit, and the Great Ming expand Qingzhou. The Tahirids falls to the Ming dynasty and Mamaluk. The two powers' relations grow bigger. The island of modern-day Sri Lanka is united by the Ming dynasty, with the Jaffna kingdom becoming part of Kuti. Joseon becomes a protectorate of the Ming Empire. The Ming dynasty leads peace talks between both of its major allies, the Mamluks and the Ottomans. The Ottomans and Mings invade Ormus in modern Oman, and take over the kingdom. The Great Ming gives the Mamluks some land from Ormus in exchange for the city of Damascus. Timurids are invaded by the Safavids. The Ming and Ottoman empires supply the Safavids with more ammunition. The Portuguese conquered Malacca Sultanate, causing the kingdom to collapse. The Chinese traders were taxed and weren't allowed much land, and some Chinese children were kidnapped. The Ming dynasty becomes enraged and sends an army, conquering Malacca. They now control trade through the strait fully. The Timurids collapse, and are replaced by the Safavids. The Ming dynasty helped the Ajuran Sultanate defend themselves from the Portuguese Empire. The Ottomans also helped Ajuran. The two great dynasties beat back the Portuguese from Ajuran. The Ajuran Sultanate becomes a protectorate of the Ming dynasty and the Ottomans. At this point in time, the Ming dynasty's colonial empire in Africa and Asia is at its height. After the events of 1541, the dynasty stayed stable and strong for more than 2 centuries, before the colonies slowly started to gain independence. Throughout this time period, the Ming dynasty stayed the main power in East Asia, with only a few rebellions or hiccups. The emperors stayed as the head of state, though they slowly lost their power to a constitutional monarchy, much like Japan or the United Kingdom. In 1972, the Ming's final colonial possession, Qingzhou, gained independence, marking the end of the Great Ming colonial empire.